Cancer. Welcome to Yellow Cardinal Tarot. My name is Carole, and if you're new to my channel, I want to welcome you. And if you're coming back for another reading but haven't subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe. And I just want to say that the blind spot is the reading that we're going to be doing today. And I started this series about 3 weeks ago. I did Sagittarius's reading. And after that, I went and did some personal healing. And I find that when I get into that space where I need more personal healing and there's stuff coming up for me, the tarot cards won't call me. I can sit down and I can push my way through it, but I just don't read them in the same intuitive way that I can. I have a spirit that I invite in, and if I'm not feeling it, it will be a real weak link, so I won't be able to do it. So I was sitting here in my room, because this is the same room where I do all my computer work, and I'm just staring at this tarot, these cards, and they're just pulling me and going, I'm like, I love reading tarot, and that's where I wanted to get before I can sit back down at this table and do your reading. So I struggled with what I was going to do, if I was going to continue on with this series, and it was like, no, I think it's a very good series that I've decided to do, and so I'm going to keep doing it. And so your blind spot, I'm going to start off with probably one of the first oracle decks that I bought when I first started reading tarot, and that was Teal Swan's oracle cards. And they're a bit bizarre, and I say bizarre because they're different than most oracle cards in that they have what's called a sigil on them. And the sigil is not a symbol in any way. It's teal. I read, the introduction here, and I've also seen the video. She does a really good video on these cards, and she says that the sigil itself is like, it's magical, and it's considered to have magical powers, and it has an essence on its own. So it's not a symbol, but it's incredibly powerful because it represents a certain subject matter, but it doesn't represent a certain subject matter. What it does is, and I'm reading here from some notes I took, what it does, it's going to help you become most aware of the contents of your specific blind spot. So what I'm going to do in this reading today is I'm going to look at what situation, issue, or decision that you're facing right now, and then I'm going to look at what's coming up from your shadow for healing. And if you're not familiar with shadow or shadow work, I'll leave a video for you below, and it's called How to Face Your Own Shadow. It's a video that I put together from my other channel called Carole Cares, and it really is a powerful video that's going to help you start to face your own shadow, and that's that stuff that lives in your unconscious, right? And this is a healing channel, and so the video that I'm going to suggest for you about facing your own shadow below is actually something that I put together myself on my other channel called Carole Cares. And then I'm going to look at some guidance that the tarot has for you as far around this particular blind spot that you have. Now, before I pull the tarot, what I did was I sat down before I came on, and I pulled a card for you because I wanted to look at it and understand the essence of your card and sort of what we're looking at here. Usually when I pick a card and there's quite a bit of, there's like a couple pages written on it. And so what I did was I went through it and I looked at, okay, what does this card, what are we really looking at here? And remember, it's going to be a blind spot for you. So it could be something that you're going to sit here and go, I don't have that. That's not me. I'm not doing that. Be very careful when you hear those things, because that's your ego, because it does not want you to recognize this about yourself. There's a situation here that you're dealing with, and the blind spot here is related to superiority. And so I'm going to read a bit here just to give you kind of an idea of what we're looking at. So if you've drawn the sigil, you've fallen into the ego trap of superiority. And like I said, your ego's not going to want you to know that this is happening. And right away, like if you're hearing, this isn't true, I don't feel superior to other people. Be very careful with that, because that is your ego. Your ego's desire to see itself as better is clouding your awareness. It's clouding your judgment and your capacity to achieve what you really want in this scenario. So the ego is preoccupied with comparison thinking. We have learned that to be less than others in any way is bad, and that it leads to things that threaten not only our self-esteem, but also our well-being and our ability to get what we desire. So the human ego cannot handle perceiving itself to be inferior. It is a threat. It begins a subconscious mission to try to gain equality, and more than that, to become better than the person it currently feels inferior to. You will find any way you can to knock them off that pedestal, or try to get on a bigger pedestal yourself. The thing we are most concerned with when it comes to equality is value. We want to be valued equally or more than other people. If you've drawn this sigil, you are being called to really see how you are in a fight to be valued by demanding that you are more and better than someone else in some way. This suggests that you have an insecurity lurking within you. What is it? Even if you are a better athlete, for example, or know more about something than someone else does, your superiority in this scenario is doing damage and preventing what you desire. Something you are thinking, saying, or doing is making people feel inferior, which makes them perceive you as a threat. If you have drawn this sigil, you are being called to love. To love is to take something as part of yourself. When we love something, we root for that thing to get what it wants instead of preventing it from getting what it wants. We cease to be against it. Instead of thinking, speaking, and acting superior, which is fighting for a person to see themselves as inferior to you, redirect yourself and them towards recognizing their unique intrinsic value. So what I'm going to do right now is, I know these are very, very powerful. And I think, a lot of us, when we pick up these oracle cards, we're thinking we want to look at something that's like sort of a theme here that we're dealing with. But I think the thing that's really coming out here is that, I know you've heard the word of superiority complex, or some of us might even know that we have this like feeling of feeling superior to someone else, but we're not quite sure why and what's involved here. And so I'm going to look at the situation that you're sitting in right now in regards to this sigil. And I know that Spirit's going to pull me out the cards that you need. I'm going to be using the Curious Travels deck, one of my favorites. And then I'm going to be clarifying it with the Radiant Rider-Waite, which is another one of my favorites for clarifying it. And I've shuffled those before I came on. So let's look at right now, Cancer, what situation or issue, decision you're sitting in right now that you're facing. And it's related to this superiority card. All right, so one card for that. If I can have one card for Cancer, for the situation that's related to this. We have the Ten of Swords. Is the first card. And then I want to look at what's coming up from your shadow that needs healing. And this is your subconscious, right? It's your unconscious. And that's actually what's driving you to feel this need to be superior in the situation that you're in right now. So let's have one card for that. Six of Swords in reverse. So far 2 swords on the table. Swords has everything to do with our mental thoughts, our mental energy, things we tell ourselves, which makes a lot of sense, right? Things we tell ourselves. And oftentimes our ego will tell us things. And that would be, for example, about how superior we are, or how better we are than other people. I have been guilty of this, and there's something behind that, and so that's what we're here to figure out what it is. And what guidance does the tarot have for you? Well, you have the Ten of Cups. No surprise that you end with a card of the Ten of Cups. Has everything to do with our emotions and feeling, right? Because Cancer, you are the sign that is very emotional, very sensitive. And some of us, maybe some of you Cancerians that are out there, have been told when you were younger that you were too emotional, too sensitive, crybaby, things like that when you were younger, right? And we learned as a young child, well, not safe to have these emotions. So let's see if that has anything to do with what's happening here. So can I have some clarifiers for the Ten of Swords for Cancer? For this Ten of Swords, couple cards, please. That one does want to come out. So you have the Ace of Swords in reverse, another sword here, and one more, I think. There we go. The Hierophant card. And let's look at the Six of Swords in reverse here. And this is your shadow. One more card. You have the Queen of Pentacles and the Ace of Cups this time. And both in reverse. And the Ten of Cups, couple cards, advice from the tarot. Feels good to be back reading tarot. Oh, it's funny because I think of my own journey just to get back here at the table, and it's like, you know, here I'm talking about superiority, which is interesting, but I can definitely get into the inferiority space as well, thinking I'm not good enough, right? Not good enough tarot reader, or not good enough, whatever it is, and that can really set me into a real spin here. But there's, you know, there's a lot of healing, always a lot of healing to go around. Okay, what's going on here? Just to bring us to that next level, the next step that we want to do. Yeah, so every time I disappear for a while, I think, well, the next time I come back to this table, I'm just going to be that much more intuitive, I guess. And the cards are just going to, you know, it's going to be more powerful, my reading. So you have a Two of Wands in reverse and the Ten of Cups in reverse. Interesting that you have the Ten of Cups now in reverse. And it's like the universe wants you to feel, and right now you're not in that position. But we're going to see what's going on. So let's start to read what's going on. What's the situation you're sitting in right now? Well, I'm going to say you're at the end of your rope. And that's the expression that came up, just like you're done. You've had enough. You're fed up. Boy, have I been here. You know, here's this, and I think it's, you know, when you think of, like I said, swords are your mental energy. And we can sit and tell ourselves so many things about ourselves. I see every one of these swords as a mental thought or a mental belief system that you have about yourself, Cancer. And gee, I can list so many, more than 10, you know, if I want to sit here and I want to tell myself so many things about how I feel, and I can hear it, you know, depending on what it is. For example, if I want to take, you know, me being away from the tarot table for a while, it's like, you can't do this. Who do you think you are? You're a fraud. You're making this shit up. You know, people aren't going to care about what you have to say. And I can spin on that, and I can beat myself up until I get to this point where it's like, okay, I can't do tarot for a while. And that's what I'm talking about, this type of situation for yourself where it's like you're at the end of the rope and look what it's done to you. Look what your mental thoughts have done to you. There's so much going on in your head, and you're spinning on it, but I think you've like hit that cement wall and it's like, boom, I'm done, I'm giving up. And I think you're wanting to give up, you're hearing that message, I want to give up, right? And that's your ego, that, by the way. That is your ego saying that, you know, things are so bad in your head that you're spinning. You've spinned around the situation so much that you might as well give up. And that's the first thing I want to say is you have to realize that these thoughts that you're telling yourself is definitely the ego that's just playing and repeating things. And oftentimes these things that we can spin about and tell ourselves are messages that we've heard from childhood, messages that we've heard from adolescence, you know, from kids out in the playground, from our parents, from our caretakers, from authority figures, if we played any sports, things that people told you. It only takes, you know, one thing that somebody said to you and you've just stored it, right? And you've put it away, and that's where, you know, this whole idea of doing our shadow work and pulling out those things that we've said, that we were told when we were younger and we believed them, we continue to spit them out until, you know, you've had enough. And so there's this Ace of Swords here, right? And the Ace of Swords by itself is your truth. Like, who are you? Who are you, Cancer, under all these thoughts that you've been telling yourself, all these belief systems that you've been holding on to all your life? Who are you? And this ace, it's always like a new beginning. Like the universe says, okay, you're feeling fed up, right? It's like you're at the end of your cycle right now. And there's this new beginning that's coming for you. It says, listen, Cancer, like, you know, who are you? If all of this is doing you in, all these things that you believe about yourself is doing you in, well, who are you underneath all those beliefs? Because they're not true. This sword says, you know, we're going to cut through. I like to call it the sword of that's going to cut through all the bullshit. It's the one that's going to come and cut through all of those belief systems that you have about yourself. And it's on offer here for you. It's like it's a gift from the universe. But I think there's a real, because of the state you're in, I'm thinking that you're probably feeling a hell of a lot of hopelessness right now around this. When we get to that point where it's like, I'm fed up, I'm done, I can't take this anymore, there's a lot of hopelessness. I call it futility, but there's a lot of that that's going to come in, because I want you to remember when you were younger and you heard all these things that were said to you, well, guess what? Guess how you felt? You had no way out. You felt hopeless. You felt like shit. And now it's kind of like this is coming up for you to look at. It's like, okay, let's look at some of this stuff, right? There's a new beginning for you to really get to the truth of, is this really true? Is this really true what you believe about yourself? And then you get to the Hierophant card right after it. And the Hierophant card, you know, tells me everything. And I've sort of been talking about it already, but you have these two individuals that are sitting here, these right here, and they're listening to this papal figure, just, you know, spewing out his wisdom, telling him, teaching them. And they're like sponges. They listen, right? Maybe they're recording it, but they're going to go back and they're going to tell other people, and they're going to spread, you know, the wisdom that's coming from this figure. And I see this as, I always say that this is the way that you were wired. You know, when you were younger, this is like the wiring card, my Hierophant. It's like when you were younger, all of these things that you were told right here, that's what you were wired to believe all your life, that you were these things. And so there's a big question here that I want you to look at, and it's like, you know, how are you wired? Do you really believe these things about yourself? Whatever it is you're telling yourself in this situation, right? Do you really believe it? And a lot of times when we have this sense of not feeling good enough about ourselves, we can put on that superiority face, you know, and because we need to get back to this card right here. We can go around and we can pretend or think that we're very superior to other people. It's very interesting, and this just popped in my head, and it, you know, and I think a lot of people, and because you're listening to this, I know that yeah, I feel like I'm having to share this right now. Maybe this is you, Cancer, but I know that, you know, spirituality is a big thing now, and everybody has sort of their own way of getting to their own spirituality. And I know myself, when I started to awaken to my own pain, when I started to become aware of, you know, what my where my own thoughts came from, my own belief systems came from, and I started to, and that is when I got into intensive therapy about 8.5 years ago. And I was on the spiritual track. And I started listening to a lot of Eckhart Tolle. And in fact, I started binging. It became an addiction to listen to him. And the particular therapist, a bodywork therapist that I was seeing at that time, told me, you know, Carole, to awaken is like a burden. And I always remember that. And I'm not sure I agree with it right now. Yes, I know where he was coming from, but when we start to awaken to our pain, notice I didn't use the word awakening, because that is something that's really thrown around. We have to be very careful with that, because when we awaken or start to awaken, I always hear people say, I had my first awakening, or I had my awakening. Well, you're always awakening. I mean, you're always evolving. You're never going to stop learning. You're never going to stop growing. And I think when we get on this spiritual sort of awakening stuff, sometimes we can say shit, we can say stuff that can piss a lot of people off, because this talked about how there's things that you're doing that are pissing people off. I'm just going to say that in my own language, right? It's like, so why are you making people angry? And I'm wondering if maybe if you are on that spiritual path, and it's great that to get on that, but sometimes we can start off by what I call becoming a spiritual bypasser person, where we can, you know, sort of forget that there are things that we have to deal with. Yeah, okay, we might be going on our spiritual path, but our spiritual path means we're also going inwards, and we're also healing. But we can grab on to our spirituality, and we can start to think that, oh, I'm more important than other people, or I'm better than other people because I'm awake, you know. I don't know why it's coming up for me, but it's just like, this is what I needed to say. And I was like, okay, but I'm going to go off on a tangent with this. But it was like, no, you need to say this. And so we have to be very careful that our spiritual journey, we don't become spiritual bypassers on our journey, but we all sort of start off with that at the beginning of our journey, I think, sometimes, where we don't know what to do with this. And it's there's a lot there, but we can often jump on it and think that we're better than other people, because that prevents us from looking at our own stuff, right? Just another thing to jump on that's going to prevent us from not having to heal. And so this is what I'm think is happening, that there is this superiority feeling that you have about yourself, but it's a cover-up. It's a cover-up of emotions that are hidden here. Emotions of maybe feeling less than, or maybe of being told, Cancer, that you were less than when you were younger. And so we're going to look at your unconscious. We're going to look at your shadow, and that's what's going to tell me, you know, what were you told when you were younger? Let's look at what you're told, because that's what this superiority complex, that's your blind spot. This is your blind spot that you don't know, because it's sitting in your unconscious. I like to see your blind spot as something that you need to heal. It's something that you need to heal. And so let's start off with the Six of Swords in reverse. You have this individual in an upright position who is, almost looks like a shaman. I see him as a shaman. He has the shaman veil on, right? And a shaman can be a very healing figure for us. And it's like, or maybe, you know, shamans are like these individuals that can see, they can see in the dark. They just know certain things, and this shaman knows where to go. And when you were younger, I believe maybe that you were protected, very much protected, because this card tells me that when you were younger, you weren't in a safe place. It's in reverse. In an upright position, this would tell me you need to get to safety. But I see now, because it's sitting in your shadow, that you were very much protected by, you might want to call them your guardians when you were younger, because you weren't in a safe place. And let's see why you weren't in a safe place. And maybe I'm thinking you weren't in a safe place to feel your emotions. And because I can see this, where this is going. And like I said, I said it at the beginning, and about Cancer, how you're a sign that maybe you were told that you were very sensitive as a child, and you weren't allowed to feel your emotions. And so I'm going to say that because you weren't in a safe place, you weren't in a safe place where you could feel your emotions. Maybe for sure you tried and you were shut down. This next card tells me, this is the Queen of Pentacles. The Queen is the feminine side to us. We all have a masculine and a feminine side. Has nothing to do with our gender. And I see the Queen as the feminine side of us. And she is holding a pentacle. And the pentacle talks about our body. And the Queen, the feminine side of us, is not afraid to be in our body. Because when we're in our body, we feel everything. And when we're younger, when we're very young, 4, 5, 6 years old, we're grounded. We're centered. We're living from our body. And it's when we're told things that are very painful, things that happen to us, things where we're told and makes us be in a place where we don't feel safe to feel our emotions when we're younger, we will, she's in reverse here. So this feminine quality that we have of being in our body when we're younger, being grounded and centered, well, we're going to take ourselves out of our body, because if we stay in our body, we're going to feel those big emotions of not feeling like we matter, not being able to show your emotions, not feeling safe. And that's huge for a kid. They can't handle that. They can't handle those big emotions. And so our ego will kick in and pull us out of our body and put us in our head. And ego wants us to stay there. And that's where I think you are right now, where I talked about your ego a bit at the beginning, right? That's our masculine side of us. And I talked about that, how, you know, they want to keep you there. They don't want you, they want you to believe that you're superior than everyone else. They don't want you to listen to what I'm saying right now. But that is just a cover up for how you really feel. And that is that your emotions don't matter. And if we are told when we're younger that our emotions don't matter, we really don't feel like we matter. And the final cup, the final card that's sitting in your shadow is the Ace of Cups in reverse. And so let's take a look at that. And like I said, the Ace is like a gift from the universe. It's like a new start. And so when you were younger, you would have, shown your anger. You would have shown your grief. You would have cried. A lot of kids cry, right? And I think you learned at a very young age, because this is the Ace. This is the beginning of feeling your emotions, right? You learned that they weren't safe. And you pushed them far down. You know, you pushed them far away in your unconscious. And I think there's a part of you that says, you know, we're not taking them out. It's not a safe place for us to take them out. And so what you've done is you've put on this I'm superior to other people. Whether it's, you know, in the spiritual world that you've taken that on, and you're going to decide what situation this is. But like I said, there's something here that you've decided that, you know, you're superior to whatever it is, you're superior to other people. But when you peel that away, There's some real inferiority there. There's some real emotions that need to be felt, especially if you're sitting here feeling very hopeless, right? And this is what this is trying to bring about here, this blind spot, is that, you know, there are some things that you were told when you were younger and you're wired to feel this way. What is it you need to feel? What are these emotions that you need to feel? There's some grief probably. There's probably a lot of shame there, right? When you were told you can't feel your emotions and you don't matter. There's a lot of shame behind that. And so how do you start to heal this? What's the advice from the Tarot, Cancer? Well, you have the Ten of Cups. The universe wants you to bring you to a place where you recognize that, you know, humans feel. We're meant to feel. And we're not just meant to feel certain emotions. We're meant to feel that entire range of emotions here. Beautiful. See this beautiful sun here and these kids that are, I just see these kids that are free, right? Not afraid, not fearing what would happen if they were able to feel their emotions. Imagine the freedom in that. But we know what it's like when we see kids when they're little and they're not allowed to feel. Well, they'll go into that, you know, that huddle, and they'll just pull away because they were told they're not allowed to feel. And then, you know, when they take out a lot of sometimes these emotions out on the playground of their frustration of not being able to feel at home, and then they're called crybaby in the playground. So, you know, I think this is a situation where the universe is saying you're meant to feel all these emotions, and it wants to bring you back to that place where you can feel again. And the Two of Wands in reverse is coming up next, because the Two of Wands is like, in an upright position, the Two of Wands speaks about you're getting a nudge. There's this nudge to take your life in a different direction. There's this nudge, and maybe you're feeling it. It's not like you have a plan, but it's like, I know I'm going somewhere. I know I'm meant to go somewhere here. But it's in reverse because I think there's a resistance on your part. Maybe there's a big fear on your part. But I think, though, when you start to feel some of these emotions behind this feeling of superiority, the universe says, you know what? There's a different direction for you. You're going to be going in a different direction once you start to feel these, right? And I know Teal Swan talked about love and moving towards love. And to me, when you move towards love, it's about the most loving thing you can do for yourself right now, Cancer, is to decide, I'm going to feel some of these emotions. And what do you mean? Like, how do I start to do that? Well, think about the things that you've been telling yourself. You know, what have you been telling yourself? That you don't matter. My feelings don't matter. I want you to sit. I want you to ground yourself. And I want you to feel. Say that to yourself. I don't matter. What's that feel like? Put yourself in the shoes of your young child when they heard that when they were younger. How do you think they felt? How do you think? How would they have cried? What would they have done? Because they didn't cry, and it's up to you right now, Cancer, to feel those emotions for them. You know, you're that nurturing sign, and you're the one that's going to nurture you, not anybody else. Now it's you that has to nurture you. And finally, you have the Ten of Cups that are in reverse right here. This is what you ended with. Because I know there's a resistance on your part. I know there's a huge fear on your part to believing that, you know, there's a way out of all of this. But, you know, the only way out of any of this is to start to feel. Is to start to feel these shitty emotions that you have of what people told you when you were younger. And realize that there's a new direction for you waiting behind that feeling of superior. And I think it's important for you to get at. So I want you to have compassion for yourself, for what you're working through, Cancer, right now. I'm going to leave you with, I think I'll leave you with a video that I've done. And I mentioned it at the beginning, actually, about how to do shadow work. And there's a lot on that video, and it'll lead you to some other videos that I've done. Have a look at that and see if there's something in there that you can relate to and that might help you. So take care, and I'll talk soon. Bye.